Flat Earth, aliens, UFOs, and the war against God. And this is, again, a modified and extended version of my Testing the Globe lecture. I'm sorry, but when you look into the founding of these organizations and the people involved, there's absolutely no reason whatsoever that I will ever trust these people. And when I look at their allegiance against God, against his anointed, against the Messiah, and all the things that they do in favor of the man of sin, the man of lawlessness, the beast, the Antichrist, whose number is 666, and all of the things associated with the globe that they push, that just so happen to also, in one way or another, end up equating to some form of 666, I have to be honest with you, it sure does look like, if not the great delusion itself, a big portion of it, a huge portion of it. Evolution is not even remotely plausible without the cosmology that is being pushed in the Copernican model. The whole idea of suns eventually spitting out, or in the process of forming, creating planets that cool in orbit around suns, and the whole idea that all the stars that we see out there in the heavens are suns just like our sun, and likely with planets going around them just like we have planets going around our sun, supposedly. The possibility that some of those could have life on them, to me, all of this is a big setup. And one of the things that I find interesting about the idea that Flat Earth is coming out now is I believe we're getting really close to some sort of disclosure event. And you've got other people out there, of course, the ancient aliens crowd always pushing it. The Anunnaki and whatnot are ancient alien creators. Evolution has run its course. It's gone completely bankrupt. So even people like Professor Richard Dawkins saying, well, yeah, intelligence design, is likely the way it could come about, but it would come about in the following way, that some ancient civilization out there in the universe, who itself allegedly evolved from some sort of Darwinian evolution type of scenario, reached a high level of sophistication and came here and seeded our world with the mechanism that made evolution possible here. Of course, it just keeps pushing the problem further out. How did that other, if it requires intelligent design to kickstart evolution, then how did that other allegedly advanced civilization out there evolve? I mean, sooner or later, you got to get to a first cause, and that first cause is going to be God. But this narrative is being pushed on us that ancient aliens have been here before. They were likely our creators, or at least helped kickstart life. And they're coming back. UFO sightings are increasing exponentially every year. UFO and alien abduction scenarios are being reported exponentially more and more every year.
There's never been a phenomenon like this. This is completely unprecedented. What was happening was that people were talking about this reproductive material. People were having sperm taken, they were having eggs taken. People report that they were having embryos injected into them and sometimes retrieved from them. I began to hear accounts of abductees who were taken into a room and their attention would be directed to a screen-like device. And on the screen, there would be a scene of normal human activity. A picnic, kids playing ball, guys standing around a grill, people talking to each other. And they'll hear in their minds, can you tell the difference between you and us? And the person will look at the screen and say, no, everybody looks the same to me, And they'll say, see, isn't that wonderful? Isn't that great? Soon we will all be together. Soon it will be wonderful. Soon everybody will be happy. Now, you hear that once. It's not a pattern. You hear that once, you just discard it. Interesting, who knows? But when you begin to hear it over and over again, then suddenly it has different meaning. This is from other people who are not aware of this testimony. And then I began to understand that what they were telling me these abductees, what these beings were telling these abductees, is that ultimately this is an integration program into the society, not with gray aliens most likely, but with these hybrids who look quite human.
And you got people like Stephen M. Greer out there saying, hey, disclosure is imminent. It's just around the corner. It's going to happen. Although he's been saying some stuff that's rather interesting lately, that he even believes there's going to be a counterfeit version of it. That we have the technology right now that human beings could fake UFOs with our own technology, make people believe that it's alien spacecraft, but it could very well just be black budget DARPA type projects, developed in Area 51, human engineered aircraft that are being used by our government or the governments of the world to deceive people that it's really aliens. He's warning about that.
The military term, so you know it, is a false INW or a deceptive INW, indication and warning. And it's basically like the Gulf of Tonkin event in Vietnam. You basically exaggerate or hoax an event that then manipulates policymakers. So this was the ultimate takedown of official disclosure, which was about to happen in 1989. Got it? 26 years ago, November 1989. So here we are in 2015, and it took a lot to piece all this together, and I began to look into what the electronics were with this and what kind of technologies they might have. And one bit of insight that the prince had, he said, so he told me that the reason he was funding the abduction groups is that he was convinced that there was an existential threat from outer space. That's been the Sub Rosa plan since the 56, and that he wanted people to hate the aliens enough to pay the blood and treasure of World War III. And he also wanted it to be eschatological, where it would result in the end of the world, so that Christ would return and the good folks would go up in a flying saucer, I guess, with Christ. Now, this is what he was telling me. I'm just listening, and I'm going, whoa, this is like, woohoo. And he was completely convinced that this is what needed to happen. This sort of end of the world eschatology is the study of the end of the world event, and that's why he was putting so much money in and providing so much funding to Mack and David Jacobs and Bud Hopkins and all this. And he told me, he says, I'm going to stop funding John Mack because he's become too positive about contact, and I only want to fund people who are going to put things out there that scare people and make them hate the aliens. He said this. So I went, oh boy. Now this is connecting a dot that all of you better listen to very carefully. It's the last thing you learn today. And that is that there is an overarching agenda that was hatched in the 50s. Remember that psychological warfare document and its value? That was hatched in between 53 and 56 to create the specter of a threat from outer space that does not exist. Werner von Braun stated on his deathbed, and we have the testimony of his assistant, that and said, they will first have the Cold War, then we decided there would be nations of concern, then global terrorism. We have this testimony from before 9/11. Then that would be followed by threats from outer space. They'll start talking about asteroids and things of this sort, but the ultimate one they're going to play is the alien threat, and it's all a lie, and it's all a hoax. But in order for the lie to work, they have had to create a body of disinformation, false information, and frightening scenarios, and actual events that would be convincing to our policymakers like Reagan, convincing to the average person, and to the UFO public that consumes videos, entertainment consoles, movies, etc. And that has been the 50 to 60-year plan. Don't forget that no less a figure than Douglas MacArthur in his last address to the Congress said World War III will be interplanetary. So they have been wanting to provoke an interplanetary conflict for as long as I've been alive, and I'm no spring chicken. And, all right, so this gets into a huge problem of how people consume information and can be manipulated through fear. Because if you look at the roots of human warfare, the early days, and even today, it's people abducting a tribe's women, raping them, abusing them sexually, etc., and so on. This is all stuff that they are simulating and saying that the ETs are doing through these abduction scenarios. It is 100% being done by military special operations that are this paramilitary force. And this is the deep end of the pond. Now, when I discovered this back in 1994, now this is 21 years on, I was told by someone in the intelligence community, don't talk about that, because that's what's really dangerous for you. And it's also what will discredit you, and it will also cause them to hate you the most, because you're defanging their whole war plan. The next big war is not terrorism, it's interstellar. And if you expose that it's a hoax, it takes all the steam out of their plan.
And I'll stop it there. You can watch the rest of his lecture on this channel right here. And I actually recommend that you check out a lot of his stuff. He's got some really interesting stuff. I know a lot of people want to write him off, but he seems to have some credible sources for his, for what he's saying. And, more and more in the last few years, he's been talking about a counterfeit alien disclosure that be 100% orchestrated by human beings in order to push forth an agenda. Now, of course, he's not a flat earther. He believes in the spinning globular earth model and that there are ancient aliens out there, and he believes we need to reach out to them and, shake their hand and say, hey, let's be friends, and all that good stuff. But, to me, I don't believe, even before I got into the flat earth, I didn't believe in ancient aliens anyway, or aliens in other worlds. I believed in all along that we're dealing with fallen angel activity and demonic activity and things of that nature. And yet still, we have to acknowledge that we've had constant media bombardment, both in, sort of mainstream news as well as in movies and pop culture and all kinds of stuff, always, always, always pushing this alien agenda, people from other worlds out there. And I mean, we've even had U.S. presidents perhaps preparing us in advance for what they may or may not know is coming and setting the stage for all this.
I couldn't help at one point in my discussions privately with General Secretary Gorbachev, when you stop to think that we're all God's children wherever we may live in the world, I couldn't help but say to him, just think how easy his task and mine might be in these meetings that we held if suddenly there was a threat to this world from some other species, from another planet, outside in the universe. We'd forget all the little local differences that we have between our countries, and we would find out once and for all that we really are all human beings here on this earth together. In our obsession with antagonisms of the moment, we often forget how much unites all the members of humanity. Perhaps we need some outside universal threat to make us recognize this common bound. I occasionally think how quickly our differences worldwide would vanish if we were facing an alien threat from outside this world. And yet, I ask you, is not an alien force already among us? What could be more alien to the universal aspirations of our peoples than war and the threat of war?
I think maybe I'd answer it this way. I keep, in my frustration sometimes, actually, if you count some of the things going on in smaller countries and all, there have been about 114 wars since World War II. But I've often wondered, what if all of us in the world discovered that we were threatened by a power from outer space, from another planet? wouldn't we all of a sudden find that we didn't have any differences between us at all? We were all human beings, citizens of the world, and wouldn't we come together to fight that particular threat?
We know now we live in an ever-expanding universe. We know that there are billions of stars and planets literally out there, and the universe is getting bigger. We know from our fancy telescopes that just in the last 2 years, more than 20 planets have been identified outside our solar system that seem to be far enough away from their suns and dense enough that they might be able to support some form of life. So it makes it increasingly less likely that we're alone.
Oh, you're trying to give me a hint that there are aliens.
No, I'm trying to tell you I don't know.
Oh.
But if we were visited someday, I wouldn't be surprised. I just hope that it's not like Independence Day.
Yeah, right.
That it's a conflict.
Well, now we have friendly
Maybe the only way to unite this incredibly divided world of ours. They're out there. We better think of how all the differences among people on Earth would seem small if we felt threatened by a space invader. That's the whole theory of independence.
You're right.
So the thing about flat Earth that really intrigues me is it nullifies all of it. If we're in a terrarium, well, there's a creator. And so if there's a creator, then immediately evolution is demolished. And the whole notion of ancient aliens goes out the window too, because everything above us is way closer and way smaller than what we've been taught. So anyway, that's my take on the likelihood that the Copernican spinning heliocentric globular Earth model could very likely be a massively huge part, if not the central part, of the strong delusion written about in Scripture concerning the last days. But if you go back and listen to what Stephen M. Greer was saying, he made reference to the testimony of Dr. Carol Rawson. And, you know, it's important to point out that this interview was done prior to 9/11/2001. Listen to what she has to say.
When I was a corporate manager of Fairchild Industries in 1974 through 77, I met the late Dr. Werner von Braun in early 74. At that time, von Braun was dying of cancer, but he assured me that he would live a few more years in order to tell me about the game that was being played, that game being the effort to weaponize space, to control the Earth from space and space itself. Von Braun's purpose in life during the last years of his life, his dying years, was to educate the public and decision makers about why space-based weapons are a dumb, dangerous, destabilizing, too costly, unnecessary, unworkable, undesirable idea. The strategy that Werner von Braun taught me was that first the Russians are going to be considered to be the enemy. In fact, when I met him in 74, they were the enemy, the identified enemy. We were told that they had killer satellites. We were told that they were coming to get us and control us, the dirty commies, that whole story. First, the Russians were the enemy against whom we're going to build space-based weapons. Then terrorists would be identified, and that was soon to follow. We heard a lot about terrorism. Then we were going to identify third world country crazies. We now call them nations of concern. But he said that would be the third enemy against whom we would be needing to build space-based weapons. And the next enemy was asteroids. Now at this point, he kind of chuckled the first time he said it. Asteroids, against asteroids we're going to build space-based weapons. So it was funny then. And the funniest one of all was against what he called aliens, extraterrestrials. That would be the final card. And over and over and over during the 4 years that I knew him and was giving his speeches for him, he would bring up that last card. And remember, Carol, the last card is the alien card. We're going to have to build space-based weapons against aliens, and all of it, he said, is a lie. Well, at the time, I kind of laughed when he said asteroids, and when he said extraterrestrials, I knew I wasn't going to deal with that subject. And now we hear in the news just today, this week, that they've slid in another enemy. Only this time we're going to protect our satellites. In other words, we have to have some reason to spend these trillions, to waste these dollars on a space-based weapon system, and they're all lies. And I will testify before the Congress under oath about everything I have said and more. Thank you.
So, I mean, we can take it or leave it. I don't know what to make of this. I certainly don't trust Wernher von Braun. This person seems to be a credible person. She's giving a testimony that, I mean, we can only assume is true unless proven otherwise. But what if Wernher von Braun at the end of his life was making a confession of sorts and trying to warn her and telling her to tell everybody else, and perhaps warning others that, look, what's coming, whatever it is that they may have had information or been privy to, is fake. It's a fraud. It's not real as it pertains to visitations from outer space. I mean, maybe there's a good reason why he had whoever he left behind after he died had them put Psalm 19:1 on his tombstone, of all things, and for Wernher von Braun of all people, right? Psalm 19:1 describing the firmament. It's definitely one of those things that make you go, So I'll go back to some of my concluding remarks that was actually recorded at the conference and share my view on what could be the motivation for all this.
Why would they lie? Just my thoughts on this. If it's true that we live on a circular, still flat Earth set on pillars under a dome within which the sun, moon, and stars were placed on day 4, and modern science is lying to us from the guys that are telling us they're 96% stupid, keep that in mind. And NASA, the company that consistently proves itself to be fraudulent. Okay, so what's the motivation? Why would they lie if that's the case? Well, first, to get people to doubt Yahuwah's word by destroying the very foundation of our Bible, Genesis, specifically the creation account, number 1. 2, set up a new paradigm where God is out and science is in. Evolution removes Yahuwah from the equation. 3, when evolution finally runs its course and becomes utterly bankrupt, introduce the idea of intelligent design, but deny the true designer his due credit and place it rather on ancient aliens. Promote the ancient alien theme as much as possible in all forms of media by perpetuating the concept of Earth as a tiny blue marble orbiting an average sun in an average galaxy among trillions of other galaxies in an ever-expanding universe. With so much potential for life to exist in such a vast expanse, the idea of alien scientists being our creators seems a lot more plausible over time and heavy indoctrination. And 5, the stage is set for our alien creators to return and bestow upon us their miracles, signs, and wonders in order to convince us all the more that all religions are false. We then put our trust in them. Finally, when Christ does return, we are all convinced that he is the enemy and our united world gathers together to make war with him, according to Psalm 2, Revelation 16, and Revelation 19.
Since I didn't have time to go over those particular scriptures at the conference, I'll do it here now. Let's have a look at those. The nations of the world intend to go to war with Yeshua. Psalm 2. Why do the heathen rage and the people imagine a vain thing? The kings of the earth set themselves and the rulers take counsel together against the Lord and against his anointed, saying, let us break their bands asunder and cast away their cords from us. Revelation 16 is the fulfillment of that. It talks about the 6th angel poured out his vial upon the great river Euphrates, and the water thereof was dried up, that the way of the kings of the east might be prepared. And I saw 3 unclean spirits like frogs come out of the mouth of the dragon, and out of the mouth of the beast, and out of the mouth of the false prophet. For they are the spirits of devils, working miracles, going forth unto the kings of the earth and the whole world, to gather them to the battle of that great day of God Almighty. Behold, I come as a thief. Blessed is he that watcheth and keepeth his garments, lest he walk naked and they see his shame. And he gathered them together into a place called in the Hebrew tongue Armageddon. And in Revelation 19:19, and I saw the beast and the kings of the earth and their armies gathered together to make war against him that sat on the horse and against his army. And the him in this case is Yeshua coming back on that white horse. So we know the end game. The end game is the whole world at some point is going to gather together to make war with God. And other places in the scripture, we see that the heavens are going to roll away like a scroll. And, I think if we're under this thing called the firmament, when that thing peels back like a great big football stadium and everybody sees what's up there and what's coming, ooh, Well, that's when everybody's going to know the true nature of the cosmos, for sure. But, you know, when it comes to, let's say, a worldwide conspiracy, those who are ruling and reigning in this world, the superpowers, behind the scene, the puppet masters, they know with whom they are at war. And so they've got to get the rest of us to help them build the weapons necessary to make war with this being from elsewhere. And I think the big setup right now, as you look at what the presidents have said, if you look at what Stephen M. Greer has said, if you look at what Dr. Carol Rosin said, quoting Wernher von Braun, the whole alien thing is a big fraud. It's either fallen angel activity, demonic, and or human agencies creating a great deception to get everybody convinced that we have to make weapons to get ready for space invaders, when the reality of it is evolution doesn't work, ancient aliens doesn't work, everything that's in the cosmos is within the firmament, therefore everything is much smaller and much closer. There is no real threat out there. The only real legitimate threat to those who hate God is God. So that forms, at least in my mind, a very plausible motivation for why they would lie about all of this.
When it comes to belief, here are our choices, ladies and gentlemen. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth, and he made us in his own image. In the beginning, nothing farted out the heavens and the earth, and we got here from goo to you by way of the zoo. Or, in the beginning, nothing farted out the heavens and the earth, and ETs seeded the goo to make you. Those are our choices. I don't know about you, but I'm going to go with option number 1. And I'm not going to try to bend option 1 to match that other stuff. They are completely and totally incompatible. So, one of the things I often hear about this is, well, Rob, you know, if that's true, if what you're saying is true, it's too big a conspiracy. Have you heard that before? Have you said that before? It's too big a conspiracy. No way. There's no way that that could continue. Right? Well, okay, let's think about that. Is it really too big a conspiracy? Compartmentalization. Do you think a private knows what the sergeant knows in the military? You think the sergeant knows what the first lieutenant knows? The first lieutenant knows what the captain knows? Captain knows what the general knows? No, they know only what they need to know to do whatever they've been assigned to do. That's compartmentalization, right? Look into the Manhattan Project. If you want to really understand compartmentalization at work, and hundreds of thousands of people being involved and tens of billions of dollars being involved, the vice president himself didn't even know what was going on. The person in the office next to you didn't know what you were doing, and you didn't know what he was doing. No problem. Compartmentalization. The mechanic doesn't know what the king knows. Start looking into some of this stuff right here. Learn about the Illuminati, Freemasons, the Vatican, Jesuits, Trilateral Commission, Bilderberg meetings, Bohemian Grove, Committee of 300, Council of 13, and just the tip of a very big iceberg, right, of control. Again, that's how compartmentalization works. Not a problem. What government is trustworthy? You guys think the United States government is trustworthy? What about the Russians? The Russians must be trustworthy. Oh, I know, the Chinese are trustworthy. Or maybe the Koreans. Oh, Israel's trustworthy. Yeah. Governments are full of conspiracies. The military answers to its government. When it comes to the space program, a little over 500 human beings have allegedly been to space. And of the 500 plus individuals who have allegedly been to space, a vast majority of those come from military backgrounds. How many of you know militaries are trained to keep secrets? Right down to the private. Has to be able to keep its nation's secret, right, from the enemy. Right? So you already have people who have been trained, military trained, to keep secrets for a government that's anything but trustworthy. Then you also have, combined with that, many of the guys that are involved, not only are they in the military, but they're also in secret societies. Secret societies. You think they might have something to do with keeping secrets? Maybe. Just maybe. Space programs also answer to their government. All nations who signed the Antarctic Treaty are, in my opinion, suspect. Secret societies keep secrets, right? How many of the astronauts were Freemasons? Well, when I started looking into Freemasonry and what they might potentially believe and have to say concerning this issue, found something really interesting. Albert Pike is one of the recognized authorities in the Freemasonry world, was a prolific writer about Freemasonry. Chapter 1, talking about the apprentice in Freemasonry. You can look this up, freemasons-freemasonry.com. It's their own website, right? They're telling you this stuff. Right at the beginning of it says, the dimensions of the lodge, our brethren of the York Rite say, are unlimited, and it's covering no less than the canopy of heaven. To this object, the canopy of heaven, Scripture calls the firmament, they say the Mason's mind is continually directed, and thither the hopes at last to arrive by the aid of the theological ladder which Jacob in his vision saw ascending from earth to heaven, the three principal rounds of which are denominated faith, hope, and charity, and which admonish us to have faith in God, hope in immortality, and charity to all mankind. Accordingly, a ladder, sometimes with 9 rounds, is seen on the chart, resting at the bottom on the earth, its top in the clouds, the stars shining above it, and this is deemed to represent that mystic ladder which Jacob saw in his dream set up on the earth, and the top of it reaching to heaven, with the angels of God ascending and descending on it. The addition of the 3 principal rounds to the symbolism is wholly modern and incongruous. When they get down to the square and compass, the square is a right angle formed by 2 right lines. It is adapted only to a plane surface and belongs only to geometry, earth measurement, that trigonometry which deals with planes and with the earth, which the ancients supposed to be a plane. You guys get that? The compass describes circles and deals with spherical trigonometry, the science of the spheres and heavens. The former, therefore, is an emblem of what concerns the earth and the body, the latter of that what concerns the heavens and the soul. So they're telling you in their own iconography and the structure of their Freemasonic lodges that that's structured after the firmament, and the square and compass represents the plane earth. Coincidentally, many of our astronauts, were Freemasons. Maybe they were hiding something. Why was NASA completely run by high-degree Freemasons during the Apollo missions? Why were and are so many of the astronauts and others within NASA Freemasons? Could it be that they knew something and were/are therefore responsible for protecting the secret? Consider what Albert Pike had to say, what I just showed you right there in Morals and Dogma. In their own writings, they describe the ceiling as the canopy of heaven. To this object, the firmament, they say the Mason's mind is continually directed. They later say the square is a right angle formed by 2 right lines representing the plane earth. Right there. Okay, let's continue. Most are just doing their job and have no reason to question it. Oh, I've got a friend that works at NASA. Oh, congratulations. He builds stuff. Cool. Oh, I got another friend. He looks at a monitor and reads data. Awesome. They build stuff to put on something that goes on a launch pad with very few people are going to be involved with, that's going to launch and go who knows where. And by the way, they all lose contact with whatever they shoot up as soon as it goes over the Indian Ocean.
Orion's over 100 miles up and going about 17,000 miles per hour. Just as it passes over the Indian Ocean, we lose communication. This is expected. The communications link we have through satellites to Orion is momentarily lost.
Why are you telling me that you lose contact, even today, with the stuff that you send up when it goes over the Indian Ocean? Could it be in that blackout time that somebody's switching something somewhere and feeding data to the people that are looking at the monitors? Maybe, I'm just suggesting, maybe that could be something like that. They build stuff, whoop-de-doo. They read data on computers, oh wow. They lose track over the Indian Ocean. The conspiracy of cosmology is no bigger than that of evolution. Is every teacher and everybody in on the conspiracy of evolution? No, they're just parroting what they've been taught themselves. As are so many other people with cosmology. It's the same thing, no different. And they put it in a textbook and nobody questions it. All right, then what's the motivation? Why would they lie? Well, I think this billboard says a lot. In science we trust. Freedom from religion. They got their prophets, right? Scientism is a religion. This is my theory. First, get people to doubt Yahuwah's word by destroying the very foundation of our Bible, Genesis, specifically the creation account. Number two, set up a new paradigm where God is out and science is in. Evolution removes Yahuwah from the equation. Number three, when evolution finally runs its course and becomes utterly bankrupt, introduce the idea of intelligent design, but deny the true designer his due credit and place it rather on ancient aliens. Number four, promote the ancient aliens theme as much as possible in all forms of media by perpetuating the concept of Earth as a tiny blue marble orbiting an average sun in an average galaxy among trillions of other galaxies in an ever-expanding universe. With so much potential for life to exist in such a vast expanse, the idea of alien scientists being our creators seems a lot more plausible over time and heavy indoctrination. And number five, the stage is set for our alien creators to return and bestow upon us their miracles, signs, and wonders in order to convince us all the more that all religions are false. When we put our trust in them, finally, when Christ does return, we are all convinced that he is the enemy and our united world gathers together to make war with him. I went to a conference, it was called the Contact in the Desert Conference out in California, and it was the who's who of the ancient aliens crowd. Everybody you've seen, the big hair guy, Giorgio, Eric Von Daniken, they were all there. It was a whole weekend of these guys talking about, the Anunnaki and who seeded our world, and they're coming back, and we've got to ascend, and we've got to be ready for them and all this stuff. And oh, by the way, they have an enemy we may have to help them to defend against. And there's a sense of urgency. They're saying this. They're saying that there's a real sense of urgency. The beings that they're in contact with in these alien abduction scenarios are saying, hey, people got to get ready. You got to embrace us. You got to be ready for us because we have an enemy and you're going to have to help fight against them. What does Revelation say? The armies of the world are gathered together in the valley of Megiddo to make war with him who's coming on the horse. If 2% of what I heard at that conference is true, the church is woefully ill-prepared to deal with what's coming. How many of you know Scripture talks about a great falling away, an apostasy? I'll tell you, because most of these churches out there aren't talking about any of this stuff, when a mile-wide spaceship parks over the city, they're going to have no answers for it. And we've had the Catholic Church all along saying, yeah, you know what, evolution, I think that might be true. Oh, yeah, by the way, yeah, plurality of worlds, the church fathers, so-called church fathers, were talking about ideas of plurality of worlds. There could be other aliens out there. Well, if you open the door to the possibility of other life forms out there, did they fall too? Did they have an Adam and Eve that sinned and need a Savior? Did Christ have to die for them too? Or is it possible that they didn't fall? They didn't sin. Ooh, then we might have to learn something from them. I mean, you've got the Vatican saying, if ET shows up, we'll baptize them, ... if they need it. We could have something to learn from them. I'm telling you, something's coming, and what intrigues me about this topic that we're talking about this evening is it nullifies and obliterates all of it. If we're in an enclosed world cosmology, you can forget evolution and ancient aliens goes out the window. There's no likelihood. It's not even remotely plausible.
Thanks so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video presentation. If you did, please subscribe to my YouTube channel, like the video, and share it on your favorite social media sites. There's a lot more to come, so stay tuned and we'll see you back next time.